He was something of an outsider in the gypsy traveling community, an enigma around which dark rumors circulated. How did he make his vangar, his money? Traveling folk asked. Why was he so secretive? Where had he learned his undoubted skills with animals? Luke did nothing to dispel the mysteries. Rather, he encouraged them by his sudden appearances at travelers' fairs and by his equally abrupt vanishings. He had a reputation at the fairs for a certain degree of honesty, which, broadly speaking, was rare. Anyone who bought a horse, a dog, or a hawk from him, more often than not, got a good value for their investment. He had plenty of traveler's tricks when it came to enhancing the appearance or disposition of an animal, but he also had something else, which the rumors described as a gift, some going so far as to say he had a magical touch. This particular rumor started years earlier at Stowe Fair, where he had come across an acquaintance in a state of despair and on the brink of furious tears. It turned out that a horse the man had bought earlier in the day had collapsed an hour later and seemed at the point of death. Luke had offered to buy the horse for half what the man had paid for it. The traveler eagerly accepted the deal, thinking the young man must be a bit simple in the head. An hour later, the same horse was sold for more than twice what the man had paid. "How did you do it, Mush?" the traveler asked resentfully when he came across Luke later in the day, having heard the price the animal had been sold for. "I talked to him," Luke replied, looking serious. "I told him it was no way to behave, and he was letting his bloodline down, being sick for no reason. He decided to get up and prove me wrong." The traveler shook his head, not knowing what to believe. Luke didn't mention that the animal had been drugged by his good friend Si, who just happened to meet its unhappy buyer when the horse was sinking to its lowest ebb. Luke had bought the vanner and immediately administered the herbal antidote, plus a secret remedy he had gotten from an old horseman whose ancestors had been members of the East Anglian Guild. Half an hour later, the animal was as lively as a horse of his mature years could be. "It was magic, I tell you," the gullible traveler insisted that evening in the pub. "I've never seen a gray changed like that." The rest, as they say, is history. The police had Luke's mugshot on file, as he had been brought in for questioning a dozen or more times in connection with daring burglaries that involved unprecedented climbing feats and inconceivable escapes if the alarm had chanced to be triggered. He had never been convicted, and by rights, his photograph should not have been retained. But he was the source of much official frustration and the desire, perhaps even an obsession, in several constabularies to put him behind bars. His reputation as a cat burglar extraordinaire was based on one brief frame of surveillance footage, where he emerged from a property in West London's stockbroker belt in the act of pulling his balaclava over his face. It wasn't enough to put him in court, but the rumor spread like a virus from one constabulary to another, until burglaries involving difficult climbs were rating as a Luke Smith 5 or a Smith 8.